What's going on, Falcon fans? It's your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. So, guys, it's that time of the season where all the rankings come out because, nobody has nothing to talk about because it's just dead time, before these guys go into training camp and get ready to start off the season in 2023. So, all the rankings coming out. We talked about the power rankings yesterday for the Atlanta Falcons, where they was ranked, as low as 27, as high as 20. By some of these media outlets, national media across the board. But today we're going to talk about where, they had Arthur Smith ranked as a coach. He was ranked pretty low as a coach going into his third season. We're going to talk about that. Another question we want to answer, since it's being Arthur Smith's third season, is this do or die? Is he on the hot seat with the owner Arthur Blank, or does he have time to actually turn this thing around before the owner, gets impatient? That's what we're going to ask today. So, guys, before we get into that, this is my 372nd video on this channel. So if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to this channel. Please hit the notification bell so you know when I drop another video. Please hit the like button, so I know you guys like to hear what I talk about. Then please share my video throughout the YouTube universe so more people can come in and hear me talk about these Atlanta Falcons. So, guys, like I said, Arthur Smith, this new regime took over in 2020, right? 2021 season, basically, right? Doing right after the COVID, right? We understand that's where this franchise is coming from, right? And the fact is, in the first two seasons, the Falcons' record is 14-20. They went 7-10 in both seasons. So Arthur Smith currently is 6 games under 500, and that's not a winning record. So, right, he has a losing record as a head coach right now, right? But you have to take things in context, and it makes you wonder when guys are doing rankings and things like that. Do they factor in, all the circumstances with each team, or do they just, look at the record and be like, this guy can't coach because he has a losing record? You would like to think that they actually took time to actually, examine these teams, examine these coaches before they would go out, and do rankings and things like that. But in this instant, I think that was not the case because having Arthur Smith ranked so low, I really just doesn't make sense. And we're going to talk about it today. So first thing we want to talk about, just the facts. Like I said, Arthur Smith is 7-10 in both his first two seasons, but we're going to look at each season in itself and kind of pull back the curtain to find out what really happened in each season. So going into his first season, right, that was the COVID season. The Atlanta Falcons and the salary cap, in itself was set at $182 million, right? It was lower than the normal, right, because of COVID. That's where the salary cap was set. In turn, the Atlanta Falcons only had 31 players under contract going into the season, which means what they had to do with no cap, right, flexibility, they had to go out and sign 1-year guys on veteran deals, right? So they had to piecemeal a roster together, right? That's almost 23 players to bring in, 23 players to bring in to actually fill up the roster. And then you look at the practice squad that they had to bring in. They had to go from 31 to 90 at the time. So just put that in for a training camp. So just imagine going in and pretty much putting a whole new team together. At the time, they had 5 guys who probably took up most of the salary, and Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, Jake Matthews, Grady Jarrett, and Deion Jones, if you guys recall that, right? So it was real top heavy in salary, 31 guys on the roster, and the Atlanta Falcons really didn't have any means to build this roster and make it, competitive. That's just where it was. So like I said, they brought in undrafted guys, they brought in guys on 1-year deals, and they tried to piece a team together, understanding that it was going to be pretty tough for them this, that season in 2021. However, they didn't make any excuses. They went out, they was competitive each game, right? Prior to that, they did trade Julio Jones to the Tennessee Titans, if you recall. So we lost Julio, which created a $15 million cap hit and going into 2022, right? Those are facts. So we know what happened in the season. Our number one receiver at the time, Calvin Ridley, only played 5 games. He took a hiatus. He was gone for the rest of the season. So only weapons Matt Ryan had on offense was the rookie Kyle Pitts, who was drafted number 4 overall, of course, and Cordell Patterson. And they had their franchise quarterback, Matt Ryan. So that's all he had on the offensive side of the ball. But if you go back to that season, the Atlanta Falcons was still in the playoff hunt, probably until that Buffalo Bills game, right? And then that's when they was mathematically eliminated. Probably was eliminated before that, but mathematically they were still in the game. Still in the hunt for the playoffs up until probably that Buffalo Bills game. So going into that season, everybody picked the Atlanta Falcons because of all the things I talked about before that, with piecemealing the roster, bringing a lot of undrafted guys, being so top heavy, trading away Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, leaving the team. Before all that, the Atlanta Falcons only picked to win 4 games that season, right? So the expectations were, no matter how good of a coach Arthur Smith is, right, he's probably only going to win 4 games because of all the circumstances I just talked about. But he exceeded expectations. He went 7-10, right? By means, that's a losing season. But if you're looking at it from outside looking in, you're looking at it from a fan base standpoint, you understood, what the situation was. And these guys went out and competed each week, right? Only a couple of games they got blowed out. A national game against the Patriots, maybe. That first game of the season against the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, so they look bad in a couple of games. For the most part, though, Arthur Smith really had those guys competitive. And he had to learn. He was a rookie head coach. So he did make some, situational decisions, down the stretch and things like that. But you see through the season, he was able to, get better in some of those circumstances. That was 2021. Going into 2022, all right, we know the situation. The Atlanta Falcons still had no cap space, right? Because they still had Deion Jones on the books. They still had Matty Ice on the books, right? They decided to trade Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts, which created the largest dead cap hit in NFL history. Was on the Atlanta Falcons books. So trading away your franchise quarterback, signing a bridge quarterback that we probably thinking that was going to be at the time in Marcus Mariota, right? They finally end up trading Deion Jones as well, right, to the Cleveland Browns. Now the Atlanta Falcons have created more dead cap, right? So going into this season, being able to play young guys, undrafted guys again, once again signing 1-year deals with veteran guys, trying to piecemeal the roster, right? The Atlanta Falcons picked to win 2 games the entire season. They was picked to go 2-15. So once again, what did Atlanta Falcons do? What did the coaching staff do? What did the players do? They exceeded expectations and they went 7-10. And based off the way the NFC South went, the Atlanta Falcons had an opportunity to actually win the division until about 4 weeks left in the season, right? Right. So make it make sense, right? Obviously, when these guys went out and they predicted the win totals in both seasons in 2021 and 2022, it was understood because of the circumstances that Atlanta Falcons was not going to be that good of a team. So they picked them to win 4 games, then they picked them to win 2 games. But they exceeded expectations in both seasons where they was able to win 7 games. But somehow the coaching is not as good. It doesn't make sense, right? So that's where you have to look at it and just pull back. And like I said, just pull back and look at the context and everything, because everything has some underlining. Everything is not just black and white. Sometimes you have to pull back and look at it, right? So if we look at the NFC South in that division, right, you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? They had the GOAT, right? They had Tom Brady. They had a defense that was there that had just went to the Super Bowl, a couple seasons ago, right? They still had their two number one targets and Mike Evans. Godwin was coming back. They had one more win than the Atlanta Falcons did, right? They had their team, their complete team put together, and they had one more win than the Atlanta Falcons. You go to the New Orleans Saints, right? Those guys, they had one of the best defenses in the league, right? They had all their weapons there. Yes, they had quarterback issues, but they had the same record as the Atlanta Falcons. Carolina Panthers, one of the best defenses in the league, right? One of the best defensive league, had quarterback issues. I do admit that they had the same record as the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons situation was totally different. Their team was in shambles. They had to piecemeal their team together 2 seasons in a row. They had a quarterback who had just came back from being benched for like the last 3 seasons, and he was our starter, right? And then they started a rookie quarterback the last 4 seasons, right? I mean, those are the facts. And somehow the Atlanta Falcons was able to go 7-10. And last year, out of the 17 games that the Falcons played, they was competitive in 15 of them. And I probably will say they were competitive in all 17. But if you look at the Bengals game, that game got out of hand. But it's context to that because both of our starting cornerbacks was out against the Bengals, right? Go back to Los Angeles against the Rams. That game got away, but the Falcons came charging back and almost had a chance to win that game. So Atlanta Falcons was competitive the entire season last year. They had the number 2 rushing offense, right? And the 27 ranked defense. Guys, that's coaching. That's what it is. That's what coaching does, right? So when they put out rankings and they don't take context in it and look at it in its entirety, right? And they put Arthur Smith as the 28th worst coach in the league. Give Arthur Smith some of those rosters, some of those guys, and see what happens, right? Look what he was able to do with Ryan Tannehill as an offensive coordinator, right? As his offense. That's what he was able to do, right? Look what he was able to do in these 2 seasons. 2 completely different teams, right? It wasn't the same team in 2021 that it was in 2022. And he somehow was able to get this team to 7-10 in both seasons. And they was competitive in both seasons. Yes, the Falcons lost. They didn't make the playoffs. But this season was exciting for the most part because of the way these guys played. It's simply as that. And that's the reason they played that way, because this regime, this coaching staff had created a culture that these guys going to be competitive. They're going to compete. And no matter if you was drafted first round, if you was an undrafted guy, if you coming in on a 1-year deal, you're going to compete, right? And you're going to get your opportunity to play. That's what this culture have created. That's what Coach Smith has created, right? So let's get to the question about, is he's on the hot seat, right? Is Arthur Blank getting impatient? Well, with all the things I just talked about the first 2 seasons, I think that Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith had an understanding with Mr. Blank that it was going to take time to actually get this team to where it needs to be. They knew, looking at the roster, looking at the cap situation, it was going to take time, right? Now, the Atlanta Falcons could have, mortgaged the future and moved up and got franchise quarterback. They could have went out of Lamar Jackson this season, right? They could have actually they did try to go get Deshaun Watson, as we recall. That's one thing they did try to do, go get Deshaun Watson to speed up the process. But however, they stayed fast, and now 2023, this is the first year that Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot can be judged based off the job of winning, not putting a culture together, not fixing their franchise, getting the franchise back in good standings with the future, right? Because right now, if you look at the way they have did in the first two seasons, the Atlanta Falcons is pretty good set up for the future, right? Got good salary management. The cap is really good. They got young talent that they brought in that got bright futures, right? They got the right guys. They don't sign on long-term deals. So they in a good situation right now. But now it's about can these guys go out and start putting wins, and get back into the postseason. So this year is the first year Arthur Smith can actually be judged about how he does as a coach, because now he has the pieces, he has the opportunity to be able to show, what he can actually do with a quality roster, right? It's not a whole bunch of guys on 1-year deals. It's not a whole bunch of undrafted guys, right? He got a good mixture of young, talented players and veterans that they have piecemeal together on this team. And it's some excitement around the Falcon organization because of that, right? Now, they have drafted 3 explosive guys in the first 3 years with Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson. Those guys expect to be spectacular this year, right? It really going to boil down to, yes, our young quarterback, Desmond Ridder, who Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot put all their faith in, right? So Desmond Ridder could be where, they're going to put them a year behind because if Desmond Ridder don't pan out, right? Because they got faith in this young man, as do I, right? But this is the year where Arthur Smith can actually go out and prove, his worth, right? Because he does have the roster. He has so many holes that a lot of people think that they needed to fill can fill, right? Right? Those sack numbers, 18 and 21 the first 2 seasons, should improve, right? That's what we should be able to see. Now, defensive wise, it's going to be different because Dean Pease has left. So all the progress and things that they made the last 2 seasons, it's going to change, right? But I have faith in Ryan Nielsen and Jerry Gray. I talked about it yesterday. That dynamic duo should really be able to put the pieces that Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot gave them and make it work, right? And then on the offense side of the ball, like I said, Arthur Smith should be able to do some of the things that he was signed to do when he came into the Atlanta Falcons, because he was seen as one of the best young coaches coming into the NFL, right? So that's where I'm at with Arthur Smith. Yes, this is the year that we can start to judge him as how good of a coach he is, right? Rookie coaches, young coaches are going to make mistakes, right? Coaching football games, right? You damn if you do, you damn if you don't, right? Should I go for it on 4th down right here, right? Should I punt the ball? What's the right play call? Since he's a play caller, you got to make sure he makes right plays. The game plan from week in to week out is really going to be important. All those things this is what he can be judged about, this year. We looked at it, the first 2 seasons, and you can see the progression that he made, getting better and better in some of those situations. But this year, I think he does have the right personnel. I think he had the right staff to help him get to where he need to be. And now, if you want to say after this season, Arthur Smith did not live up to, being the head coach that we expect him to be, you can. But guys, the first 2 seasons, it was pretty what he did and this coaching staff did was pretty awesome. It was 7-10 these first 2 seasons. And if you go back and look, I actually had them winning more than that because I watched training camps, right? I watched, all the competition that these guys had. They was really competitive last year. That training camp was one of the most competitive training camps I have seen before in 2022. So, 2023 should be even more competitive because unlike the last 2 seasons, there are not a lot of undrafted guys. These guys is guys that been in the league a while, guys that's fighting to get on this roster. You can only keep 53 from a 90-man roster. So this is going to be another competitive training camp. I can't wait to see. But Coach Smith, I feel, is the right person to get this Atlanta Falcons on the right track. And I believe them as a whole, as a regime, is going in the right direction. So guys, let me know what you think about Arthur Smith. I know most of you probably don't feel that he's the 28th ranked coach in the NFL. I mean, they got some guys that just became just a rookie head coaches higher than him, which is just ridiculous. So doesn't make sense. We talked about all the things that he had to deal with over the first 2 seasons, and he never made an excuse for none of them. Just went out and coached. He expected to win week in and week out, and that's all you can ask for from any coach in the professional sports. So guys, that's all I have. Let me know what you think about Coach Smith. Should he be ranked at 28? And do you feel that he's on the hot seat this season? This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Peace.